probably just start with questions for Coach, unless you
fire away.
Yeah.
Luke, last time we got to talk to you, Tanner wasn't signed yet, so you weren't able to talk about him, but you played against him a couple of times at Cincinnati. What did you see from him on the opposing sideline that when he came available here that you knew you wanted him on your team?
Well, it wasn't just what we saw from the opposing side. Obviously, we studied them for a while. That was the unique thing. I mean, we played them both years, the last 2 years. So you watched a lot of ball. Obviously, you watched the teams within your league, and I thought he did a phenomenal job. And it wasn't just it's the offense. They sling the ball around. No, it just you respected him, and when you were preparing for him. I think we were very fortunate when we played him. So we'll harass him about that a little bit, but our number one thing, we didn't feel like we ever wanted to let him sit back there because he was very talented and really good. And I think what we saw a little bit more this past year that made me even more nervous was his athleticism. And not that it just created and developed over 1 year, but I just think that this past year he showed some other things that I think make him even a bit more dynamic as a not a dual threat guy, but a guy that can create and extend plays, different than what I'd even seen in the past.
Jake, I'm sorry.
In terms of now that this recruiting cycle is presumably done, in terms of building depth, where do you think, since you've been here, where are the areas you think you maybe built the most depth in terms of how you want things?
Well, I mean, if you just look straight numbers, we knew we were a little bit shy numbers-wise at the wide receiver spot, so that was kind of something that we had to do just based on sheer scholarship numbers. So I thought we did a really good job of that, and I thought that we were a little bit down in offensive line numbers as well. And I think we're very top end. I think we got some really good high-end guys that have played some ball for us. But it didn't look like the numbers-wise of what we would normally carry as far as offensive linemen, because it's not just because it's a critical position, but I mean, in order to practice, in order to have a great spring, you have to have offensive linemen, and you have to have guys that you're developing at that position. Those are probably the two that jumped out right away. I think that depth-wise on the interior of the defensive line was something that was very fortunate for us even in the last day here, because I think as we look forward, that's another area where we got to really kind of address the depth of what we're doing. I think it's a big deal.
Good. Jake.
Luke, I know you had a couple of junior days events the past couple of weekends, but for you, and for the staff and the recruiting staff, what is kind of your general approach to those type of days and what you want to show to these, the recruits and their families and whoever comes with them?
Well, there's two different ways of doing things, and for us in some of these junior days, some people do mass numbers, and for us, that's not the way we want to go about it. Sometimes you feel bad because maybe you didn't get as many guys onto campus during the winter as you'd have liked to, but the idea is when you only bring in 12 to 15 guys on a weekend, even for just a day, you can spend a lot more individual time with those guys. And the last thing we want someone to do is to spend their time to come to campus and not actually have a chance to spend some more time with them. So I don't know if we got the numbers, that some would say, well, you only had 30 guys on campus on your 2 junior days. Well, it's specific and it's for a reason. In the spring, I think we'll do a much better job of getting some of the bigger numbers and getting maybe even some of the younger guys that are sophomores and guys that are going to maybe even be another 2 years away to campus. But to me, no matter what, when you have them on your campus, you got to do a great job. And I think you can be misled by having guys on your campus, and then in reality, you don't set a good example. You don't spend the time with them. You don't start to build some of those relationships, and sometimes that's the very first time they're on your campus, and you're better off not doing it if you're not going to do it really well. So I think it was really a good 2 weekends that we had the opportunity to do it. I think it'll be really big here as we get rolling in the spring here in a month or so. To really kind of, those Saturdays are going to be big for us to get as many of those kids onto campus, spend some more time with them.
I know some of the guys you can't speak on yet, but generally you guys have done some things that have historically haven't been done at Wisconsin in the recruiting world. I'm curious, when you made the move, is there anything you communicated with the staff that was possible at Wisconsin about recruiting wise?
We just had to be aggressive. I mean, it always comes down to where's the core and the crux of your program, and it's not going to change. It's here in Wisconsin. It's in that that 200-mile radius. So to be honest with you, what I would see is what we've got in Wisconsin and what we've got the ability to get it in Chicago are two areas where, that's got to be the core and the crux of our program. And I feel good about that. I don't look at the past and maybe a few guys that supposedly the last couple of years that maybe got out of the state. But that's on us. We got to do a better job. We've got to make sure we build relationships. We got to make sure we know who those guys are from their freshman, sophomore year on. So that doesn't happen. But it takes time. It takes work. And the last thing we want to do is only show up in a high school in Wisconsin only when they've got a player. So our job is right now is to get into every school and start to build those relationships. Make sure we know those guys. Have a relationship, and I mean with the coach, because those are going to be your greatest advocate as long as you do things the right way. And so I think it's going to take some time for us to build those relationships. But we'll be in and out of those schools every single year.
Luke, you've obviously worked with Brady Collins quite a bit in the past. What's your relationship like with him? And how would you describe his strength and leadership right now?
Well, he's the only coach I think that's gotten me in more trouble in the last 6 years. Or he's the coach that got me in the most trouble because all he does is go and go. And I used to say that it's all right. There's little things that happen that he paints his own office and we get in trouble because they didn't get it cleared through don't slow him down, whatever. He has incredible energy. He loves the kids. If he needs something done for the kids, he's going to do it. He used to make breakfast in the locker room, in our first years, when we were at Cincinnati and things like that. So he has an incredible, spirit about him. I mean, yes, it's energy. Yes, there's a method to the madness and there's a rhyme to the reason. And, but I think first and foremost, he loves the guys. He has energy. He creates and builds those relationships. And then I think that more than anything, me and him see eye to eye. And what our job is to do is to build football players. And sometimes we all get into the things that make us look better. Meaning, okay, well, this guy runs this and this guy benches this. When Coach Collins doesn't care about that. He cares about building football players. He'll do the things that we need to do based on, specific to positions that those guys need to do. And he is the best at what he does. And, there's no way I would have come here without him.
Go Scott, Tim Lance.
It's been from Paul to Jim to you was a pretty volatile couple of months. How have you felt that the reception you've gotten from Wisconsin fans has changed over the past few months, especially as a lot of the drink stuff has come in?
Well, that's hard for me to assess. I mean, I guess you hear things and it all is positive, but let's be honest, right? We haven't played a ball game yet, and there's a lot of things that we have to do. But the reception, I've been incredibly happy with. And some would say, well, yeah, you guys have done some things and created some energy. Yeah, but I mean, anytime there's somebody new, I think they're going to, just such great people around here that love the Badgers, they're going to give you the benefit of the doubt. Whether they were a diehard Coach Crispin or a Coach Leonard fan. And to me, that's where I see, as much as anything, what the culture is, not just of our program, but of this community, of this state, is that they love the program so much. If they had a bias, if they're, if they felt like, something was done wrong or they should have done something different, they, over and above all the other things, it's about what's best for the program. And so to me, that's where I felt, the love as much as anything through the ups and the downs. And what a tough season it's been, not just for the fans, but think about it for these players. And so the maturity on all sides is really impressive, and the trust and respect for the program is huge. So I know we have a job to do, and our job is to not just build momentum, but to continue to keep this momentum. And sometimes in the off season it's a little bit easier. When you get to the season, it's a little bit, it's different, and in different ways that you have to continue that momentum, and it's a lot easier to evaluate. And so we enjoy it, we love the momentum, but I'm one of those guys that's always thinking, okay, yeah, this is great, but our real job is to make sure that we can do this come September and October.
The video you post when you guys got to recruit, the Twitter video, how did that come to be?
I'm not sure which one exactly you're talking about.
The bat signal, if you
Oh. Okay. We'd like to try to, actually it was started for me, because a lot of times these guys know more things than I do. So then all of a sudden, you guys see a bad signal. Sometimes it's the first time I know about things too, because these kids like to keep things. They think they're keeping it from the head coach, and sometimes somebody else knows a little bit beforehand. But those guys do things strategically, and even sometimes, hey, we got to wait on it. Let's wait a day to try to spread some of these things out and try to keep this momentum rolling forward. But what we want to be able to do within our program is let you guys in as much as possible, to be honest. I mean, and I think about that in a lot of different ways for our fans, but I think about that in a lot of ways for our former players. Those guys, obviously, to me, have built this program, and to let them within, I know that's just, we're talking about, us bat signal or something when you're recruiting, but you'll see a lot more as we continue the social media side of things. I'm not one of those guys, a big social media guy. Like, we're not setting things up to try to, look good on the outside. And if there's ever anything done, and maybe you've seen a couple of the social media, I think I did something where I called our guys on it. Like, that's not my idea. Like, I'm not that creative, in case you're wondering. But we have a lot of other people within our program that are a lot more creative than me, and so they do those things, and sometimes we're trying to reach, whether it's the recruits audiences, but for me, I look at it as, hey, I want to let as many of our fans, as many as the former players into our program, so they can get a good glimpse of what's going on.
Tim?
Luke, this is an annual event, this Big Red Rally here in Milwaukee. There's an energy in that room there tonight. People are talking about the billboards, and people are talking about the bad signal and all this stuff, and the outside vibe is one thing. What is that like on the inside for you?
Well, I don't know if we get as excited on the bat signal or the billboard. Don't get me wrong, we all love it when all of a sudden we start getting our players' parents call in and saying this is really cool, or they start retweeting, and you do recognize and see those things, and and our kids do too. I mean, I can say I live under a rock, and you'll hear that a bunch. Hey, did you know what happened out there? I go, no, I live under a rock. I don't recognize some of those things, but I think that you definitely do feel the momentum, even within the program, and little things like putting a billboard up that a kid on our team, all of a sudden, I didn't realize how much that maybe even lifted him up. And so that's why I said, like, those aren't things that go through my head. That are other ways of building our program, or even within our program. That's why it takes a lot of other people that got a lot more creativity to create those things. My mind only thinks, well, you know how you build momentum? Win football games. You know how you win football games? Work hard. Get your butt in the weight room. But that's the narrow-mindedness of me. That's why you got to be able to surround yourself with a lot of really good people that can make you look better in a lot of the things that we're doing. But I do recognize that all those things are great for our program, whether it's in the recruiting. It's not just the recruiting, it's also what our kids also feel and see as well.
Yes.
Luke, you mentioned recruiting Wisconsin, but specifically Milwaukee. Like, when you see an alumni event like this that's sold out, and then I know you've been here a handful of times to talk with recruits and things like that. What does Southeast Wisconsin and Milwaukee mean to the program and the excitement here in the biggest area?
Well, I mean, we've got to do an incredible job, obviously not just within the state, but in Milwaukee in general. And I don't know the history. Like, my job is to study and understand that. Like, where all these kids are from and where all of our guys are from. But I know that this is a density population. I know that there's, a great mix here of guys, not just outside of our, big offensive lineman guys, but you're going to get a little bit more of the athletes as well. And I think that, our presence here is critical. They've done a phenomenal job, I think, in their time here. But the thing that we've got to continue to do is, in my opinion, is build those relationships. We got a lot of new guys. And the one thing that we don't have that we've had on the staff here in the past is a lot of former players. And unfortunately, we don't have a bunch of former players on our staff. I wish maybe we did, and just how things work out. But that's why it's even more important for us to be in these schools, whether it's in Milwaukee or in Green Bay or in Madison or wherever, so that these high school coaches, so these kids obviously recognize that, yes, we might not have played here, but boy, do we have the utmost respect for all the things that you've done, and especially how you do them. And so I think it's even more critical for me and for us and for our program, because we don't have quite the history. So our job is to build that history, and we'll do that. So I think it's very critical. I think it's more critical in particular in Milwaukee. I can't sit here and tell you I know the history. I just know that it's really important to us.
I have time for like 3 more. Was Steve, Colton, Mark?
Now that our recruiting cycle has ended, there have been some calls from some coaches, conference commissioners, to move the early signing period because of the crowded December. What's your opinion on that? Do you like it where it is? Do you think it needs to be moved? If so, what would...
You know, again, I think it's good for us, and I think it's good for our program. And I think that's why when they're trying to vote on all these things for coaches, I say I don't know why we really asked the coaches, to be honest with you, because we're all going to say have the opinion based on what's best for us and our program. I don't know that it's the objective view. I think we should have some guys that are not coaching anymore, that understand the landscape and are into it. I would keep the early signing period. I think the only thing the early signing period does, and the time at which it does it, is it does make some of these coaching situations that change difficult. Well, that's not something we need to worry about, right? So I think it's great for us in our program. You know, maybe for the big picture of college football in particular, it might not be in the best place, but I'm going to push that it stays where it's at, because I think it's the best thing for us in our program. We don't feel like we're going to have any turnover. We're not going to have those changes. That's the only thing at that time might affect. So I'm going to continue to push. I think it's at the right time, and you know, not just for us, but also for the kids.
Luke, I know they've been around for a while, but officially now your whole coaching staff is official now. Just when you look at the people you brought in, what are the strengths you think you have, and what are some challenges that you've experienced in bringing in new coaching staffs in your experience?
So. And we were just talking basically about the 10 coaches, you know, obviously with the strength coaches as well, Coach Collins, but for almost every single one of them I've worked with. Only 2 guys really that I haven't worked with, and obviously Coach Longo and I have had a relationship for a long time. It wasn't something that was, you know, just, hey, let's do this over the phone, let's do some Zoom, let's get together for the first time. Coach Bignell is the other guy that I haven't worked with, but everybody else I've had a relationship and worked with, so I know what kind of people they are. I know what's going to be like when it's 4th and 2. I know what it's going to be like when we have some adversity, because we've been through it at some point in time. Even if, you know, Devin Spalding, who I know, running backs coach, was a GA for us. I know a lot more about these guys, and I think that's what's, to me, what makes me feel really good. It's been a long few, you know, months, or a long month and a half, not because, you know, the situation and things like that, but just knowing that it's most importantly, it starts with the leadership within your program, and that's the coaches and the people that you're going to have around you guys. And I think it was the other night, or no, it was the last junior day. It was the first time I brought them all up to introduce them, because it was the first time, this was just this past Saturday, that we had all been together. You know, the last coach got hired, but everybody, you know, certain guys were on the road, the new guys were coming in. Coach Mitchell is the other one that I guess I haven't worked with, but for the most part, everybody, you know, they've got a relationship with. I think the thing we've got to overcome is we don't have a great tie and roots to Wisconsin. You know, all the former players that, you know, were on the staff in the past that, you know, that aren't with us anymore. You know, I feel bad about that. I think that's something we've got to overcome. I think we can and will, because of the people that, you know, that we've got. But I think sometimes it takes a little bit more time. I mean, you know, we're not just going to get into Wisconsin high school as just 1 year or 2 years in the first 2. You know, just say, okay, well, because we're not former players and we didn't grow up here, then the first 2 years we're going to do a really good job at getting to know these people, and then we'll go back to doing it a different way. Now, that's the only way I know how to do it. And but I think that's something that, you know, in my mind, as we were trying to hire staff, was something that I was trying to, you know, fit into the mix of what it is that we were doing. And probably didn't get that exact mix. So I think that's something we have to make sure that we can overcome.
Yeah. And along the lines of interacting with high school coaches in the state, one, do you know how many you met? Because we kind of see pictures of you know, at different points of the state. And then 2, you know, what's kind of the prevailing message you want to get to them, and what's kind of been maybe a prevailing question that they've wanted to express to you?
I couldn't tell you how many I've met. They have not, there's not been any, you know, I guess I should say, I mean, some of the guys that were former players maybe that are coaching today were great assets to me, because they had a different perspective on some different things. And it wasn't a concern of theirs, but it was, you know, great for them to be able to voice their opinions and the things that we can do and do better. So I think that was a really big deal. But I think more than anything, I want those guys to understand that, like, look, I'm gonna immerse myself in high school sports and football in particular. I'm gonna have 2 boys that'll be, you know, embedded in Wisconsin high school football. And a big reason for me even coming here was because, you know, I wouldn't have gone to a place where I didn't think my kids could thrive, to be honest with you. And I was really thinking about my older 2 boys and 2 kids that'll, you know, that, you know, are gonna be, like I said, in high school football, and I wouldn't go to a place where I didn't feel like they could have an incredible experience playing the game of high school football. Not everybody gets a chance to play college football. I know some of my greatest experiences were what I did in high school, and I know my older son, you know, some of his greatest experience was what he did in high school. And to be in a place where high school football is really important was important to me. So I want them to know that I'm here to help them in any way. I want to promote football in the state. I want to try to create them guys to have more opportunities to work with their kids, not just because my kids are going to be high school football players, but also I want them to know that you know, we're open all the time for them, and really just kind of making sure that they understand that they're welcome. You know, a lot of times guys that had been one place and had a relationship with somebody, now that person's gone, it's a little bit harder for them to walk back into some of those doors. And our job is to make sure they understand that it's wide open for them.
Thanks, Coach.
Thank you.